All right. I'm live streaming to YouTube.
Where can I delete?
You know, it's private right now. Let me try to send it to you.
Sure.
My computer's absolutely chugging.
It's working hard.
Yeah. Don't think I'm getting any audio.
Yeah. No, audio.
Well, on like the YouTube.
How do you know?
Because it should be making noise.
Is your sound on?
Yes.
What about, how do you know for that?
How do you know for that?
Oh.
I'm not muted.
Wait, can you click the,
Yeah, it's going.
can you click it? Click the up button.
Yeah, sorry. It's picking up voice. Right.
Realtek high definition audio. What's that? Is that what that is? No.
Those are my what is coming out with my speakers, right?
No.
It's like I just changed the speaker sound.
What? But shouldn't your normal without the microphone? Your computer is a microphone. So even if you test it on that, it should come out.
Let me change it to my. Hello. 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 Let me go to.
Can you change it back to this one?
How much does it weigh?
Oh Lord. Oh, I forgot to show you. Oh, where's my phone? I was gonna test that video and like everything in it was like gold.
Yeah, I feel like this is not COVID approved. Yeah, put your finger in it.
Not COVID approved. I don't know, guys.
We have sex.
I'm not okay. You can't say that.
Sprinkles actually taste like.
Wait, I think really.
Then I push me up.
Wait, do the. Is this one on? Hello. Can you hear me through this one? Yes. Okay. You can do some interesting ASMR.
How's the setup going?
Seems okay.
Pretty good. Just the Ethernet isn't working.
Yeah.
Did you try it again? Yeah, we tried setting up the Ethernet.
Oh, it's not working at all.
Mm-mm.
No. I think it It might be my cable.
Wait, they have to something to do with AP office or something?
Uh,
We have to let them know that we're using Ethernet.
Well, I mean, that's how we get Wi-Fi. So that one's already activated in our living room.
It's still. I even had to like when I changed. Oh, you know what it is. Did you put in my MAC address
Yeah.
like through the OIT thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I changed devices, it made me do that.
Made you do it.
Change the MAC address on this,
Mm.
or put in the MAC address.
Okay. Well, I just put in the MAC address, but again, it takes like 10 minutes. But I feel like it's been that much.
Yeah.
Have you tried it again?
It's plugged in.
Oh, you're still not using Wi-Fi?
I'm on Wi-Fi.
Well, what happens if you turn the Wi-Fi off?
I mean, it should default to Ethernet,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's just not coming up.
Interesting. Maybe I can ask see if I can alternate. Do you mind if I swap out the Ethernet for like 5 minutes? But it would take off the internet in 5 minutes. Yeah, that's already locked. Alright, bye internet.
No, unless it's your Ethernet box.
Because I've always seen MAC addresses. I guess they also. Maybe everything has to be capitalized? It's just this, right? Oh,
Who's testing?
985F.
985FD3EFC231.
Your physical address.
31, not 32.
Wait, scroll up.
This is for Ethernet adapter.
Scroll up though.
Wi-Fi, wireless LAN, Windows
Okay.
3.1.
3-1.
Craig's defense computer. Spell my name wrong.
Already there.
Craig's.
Well, on the one that I already submitted. Ah! Yeah, I have it. 985F31. It hasn't been seen yet.
Hasn't been seen yet.
No,
Where does it say?
I'm not seeing blank.
Maybe I just need to reconnect it. The power's not working either, by the way.
What?
The power? Like the power bar?
Wow. Wow.
Oh, wow. Fair enough. And it's plugged in right here. This works, right?
Yeah, because that's how this, I mean, this is working. Like here, the desktop is working. That means it's working.
No.
Not working.
Nope.
Let me put it into the other one. Not working there?
Nope.
In here?
Yes. It works.
Weird. But why?
I don't know.
Because that's working, which is plugged into that. And the Ethernet's not working.
That's why this is delayed.
Okay, I'll call them.
So-
Do your thing first?
No, it's up to you. I sent you links for the live stream and the Zoom meeting. Hello? Oh, you can hear? Huh? Is that us talking from before?
Like from 2 minutes ago.
Yes. I sent you links for the live stream and the Zoom. Cool. Good to know it's coming through.
Wait. Can you whisper into the thing?
Sam,
We'll see if we can hear it.
you're old now.
You're just walking over. Yeah, it's definitely not a microphone.
Sam, you're old now.
Residential network support, press 2. And if you're a student, 1 moment, please.
Hi, my name is Samantha McDonald. Verona Place Housing. I was just wondering if I needed to activate the port that's in my bedroom to attach the Ethernet cable, just because we're having trouble registering MAC addresses, and the Ethernet seems to be plugging in okay, but the internet's not coming through.
Okay, let me find one that you might have to- let me check.
Okay.
I'm up to travel.
Okay.
Did you know UCI's mascot is Peter and UCI is among the top 10 best public universities in the country, according to the US. UCI's first graduating class in 1986 was just 14 students. July here in October 1995. The first online degrees awarded by the
Oh God, there's a giant protest to reopen California at the state capitol right now.
Yikes.
for 10 straight years. Speaker Club Act and eight top 10 schools for the state of Louisiana. Aldrich Park was modeled after New York's Central Park, holding more than 11,000.
One of Michael's friends saw us walking back yesterday delivering cake and is now really mad at him because he saw us. He saw him around me and other people. Apparently, a really big germaphobe. And is kind of like really mad that he didn't say that he was hanging around other people.
Yeah, probably should have.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Maria.
You're live on YouTube? Wow.
But yeah, I'm gonna be. I'm testing it right now. It's streaming to like a private channel.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna be streaming so that like my family and other people who don't want to be in Zoom can like just watch, not participate. And it helps prevent Zoom bombing because we can make Zoom like more controlled, and then people who want to just watch, I can like send out the YouTube link for people to like to watch more easily.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, it doesn't like overload Zoom either.
yeah, I actually sent it out to someone posted on Twitter that was saying like, given Corona, a lot of people are going to have to do their defenses like online. So if you are, send us a link and we'll like send it out to a bunch of people. So there might be random people watching my YouTube stream.
The one that we're connected to Ethernet in other apartments is just not connecting to this particular one. Okay. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's 707. Oh, SMC DONA2.
Is that Sam?
I'm at Sam's apartment. She has a really nice setup.
Yeah, so it's that one.
Yeah, I remember her setup. I just heard that voice and I was like, I'm sure that's Sam.
Yeah, she's
It's like S McDonald.
trying to get the Wi-Fi, or not the Wi-Fi, the Ethernet set up.
Oh,
Just so like, you know, better connection is probably better.
Like McDonald, but just the first part. Yeah, and I know the bottom is.
Maria, where am I looking right now?
that I feel you're looking like straight at the camera. Like
Perfect.
you're looking like straight as like I'm looking down, you're looking like towards me, let's say. Like, yeah.
Okay, good, because I'm looking at my notes right now. So if I'm,
Okay.
it'll look
Yeah.
like I'm looking at people while I'm actually just reading my notes.
No, it looks good. Just
Perfect.
like don't read them too like quick across the page because your eyes like flicker.
Yeah, of course.
But using well, yeah.
We did that. We double checked it. Okay, awesome. Thank you. You too. Bye. this is gonna flutter. Did you try both ports? They also said, did you try it with another computer? So do you want me to try my computer with the Ethernet?
Have you set up your MAC address?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I just unplug this guy.
I think it should plug and play.
Are you gonna have Cupheads as your background?
That's my background now. I'm gonna have this white wall as my background.
Okay, let's see.
Got paid.
I did it.
Nice. Getting money is always good.
Yeah, especially right now.
I wonder if I have another.
Is lettuce like having pink spots normal?
Is what?
Lettuce.
Pink
Like-
spots.
Chopped lettuce. Yeah, like let me see. Well, I already ate it, but this is like a stem and you see like it's pinkish.
It's hard to see. It looks like it's, I mean, what you call it being a little rusty, which just means that it's like oxidized a little bit.
Okay, it is oxidation. Okay, yeah, I thought it was that, but there's also like a pink bacteria that lives like around these areas that usually lost like bathrooms and like moist areas. So I wasn't sure if it was oxidation or bacteria. Jesuk's here.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think it's a big deal.
I had another meeting like an hour ago, so it's 6 a.m. here, but
Oh.
I can manage to attend here.
It's not working.
It might be as simple as like, I just need to restart my computer.
Well, it's not working. It's not showing up on my laptop either.
Yours might not be set up.
Doing Jesuk.
Oh,
Good.
it's not working?
Good.
Where are you right now? Like in general, like you're out of quarantine, right?
What?
Oh.
Oh yeah. I'm in my home, staying with my wife
Oh, nice. That's amazing.
and the puppy.
How's your wife? How's your dog?
Yeah.
Oh, it worked.
Oh, it's on?
This one worked. Try it.
How's your wife doing?
My cable.
Is it
Now that I
live on
looked at it, I
YouTube?
think that the telephone.
This one?
Yeah, not Ethernet.
Where's Craig? What is this?
This is a presentation.
Hi.
He magically appeared.
Live on YouTube. I don't like that.
We're gonna be
It's
famous.
just like private. I mean, when I'm doing my defense, like I sent it out to someone who on Twitter said that like, because a lot of people are going to have to defend virtually, they just have like a little network where you can like promote it to them. So I might have random people.
That's
Hey,
badass.
Minnie. No, it's not.
What kind of feedback do you want
Give it a second.
before you start?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, general thoughts. I know some areas where I need to like do some more work on it, specifically like the results. Feel free to like stop me and just say like this needs more explanation or something. I'm at Sam's place. But generally just like areas you think that I need more information or I need to improve or anything like that.
Try it again.
Okay.
Craig, you said that you want us to interrupt you?
We'll interrupt you and say like, we love Brody. keep on going.
Yeah, yeah. Craig, you derped out. So I
Brady's
didn't
not
hear
here.
any. What? Why?
Sam.
Connection's unstable. That means it's time to change.
Oh, so much sun.
Sam is a really
um,
nice guy.
Areas for improvement. Your camera is not HD 1440p, unacceptable. And
It is. It's
there's
1080p.
lag. I don't like it.
Yeah, you also don't have Brody there, so
We're in the middle of trying to like connect the Ethernet, so we're
Oh,
like,
okay.
disconnecting the
Oh, okay.
adapter.
Let's
So it's just like
disconnect from Devil's Lotus and see.
drop me
oh.
from the Zoom call.
Oh yeah.
Are you
Other
connected
question?
directly to a wall or through a modem?
To the wall.
Other question, do you want us to time you in that case? Because if we were interrupting you, do you still want to be timed?
No, I'll have a good idea of that's not showing up here. I'll have a good
Really?
idea of how long it takes.
Maria, are you eating ice cream?
Yeah,
That's such a good idea.
Right out of the carton.
it's my pumpkin ice cream
Oh
that
my
I saved
God.
since
Well, let's
fall.
forget it for now.
Oh my gosh.
That's the online.
I think it's
There's
saved
no.
for now.
My mom just bought a bunch of meat. Now there's no room in the freaking freezer for freaking ice cream. This is incorrect.
Check your privilege, maybe. God damn it.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You can reorganize.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But like, ice cream. was-
Got all this beef Wellington, man. All I wanted was ramen.
It's chicken from Costco, but still, yeah.
You can reorganize it. I buy like the big bags of chicken in Costco.
Yeah.
I put them in little bags of Ziploc
Yeah.
with portions, and then like I have more space in the freezer.
And then we can have
Okay.
ice cream.
Are you all ready to get started?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please do.
Okay. Who wants to be Constance?
I want to be Constance. What does that mean? No, actually, I don't want to be Constance.
I need someone to just be
Oh, cool.
do what like Constance is going to do, which is like her, you know, thanks
Introduction.
everyone for coming. Here's what we're going to do.
Should make someone have their profile picture be
Okay.
constant.
We'll be constant.
This is Craig. He's fantastic and awesome. And I'm gonna let him take over now.
Just like that.
I want to be Kurt.
He's
Just
done
like
a lot of work with me over the last couple of years. Published several publications in grand, incredible journals, and is here to present dissertation defense about failure in video games. So I'll let you take it away.
Man, that was good.
Okay.
that was amazing, Reggie.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, that's
awesome
a good
now.
presentation. Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming to my defense, or rather, given the state of the world that we're in right now, thank you so much for not actually coming to my defense. This talk will be live streamed to let everyone know just on a private YouTube channel for my friends and family who didn't want to be in Zoom but wanted to see this at some point when I let them know if I pass or fail. So let's jump in. So we are, oh, hold on. There we go. So we're going to start by going over the literature which this dissertation is based on, starting with how failure is conceptualized in play and game research literature. We'll then cover how the psychology literature conceptualizes in individuals' reactions to failure. This will illuminate the gaps in the research that this dissertation aims to fill, leading to the study conducted that, to investigate them. We'll go over the results from the study, and by the end, consider the implications, the limitations, and some directions for future research. So failure is a common outcome when playing a video game. It can look like this, or this, or this, or countless other ways. I'm sure every one of you has some other example of a different way to fail in a video game that you're just itching to contribute right now. And because of this, because of the commonplace nature of failure in games, failure has a very special relationship with players. In his book, The Art of Failure, Jesper Juul argues that games create a paradox in that we typically avoid failure, but in games we actually desire it. In fact, he found that players of an action video game who completed the game but didn't fail at all actually reported lower engagement than those who failed their way to the end. In zombie survival game DayZ, they take failure to an extreme. When you die, your character is gone from that server permanently. Players spend hours scavenging supplies, fending off zombies and players alike. And in one instance, it can be permanently taken away. However, Carter et al. Surveyed players of DayZ and found that these interactions with failure to be positive experiences. And the researchers argue that being met with these harsh consequences for failure actually enhances the narrative and results in a more enjoyable experience. Likewise, Petrolito et al. Found that players of notoriously challenging game Dark Souls 3 enjoy the hyper challenging experiences of the game because of the feeling of achievement and sense of learning that occurs as they are failing their way to success. And of course, other games researchers have picked up on the importance of failure in games. Coincidentally, the committees of this member, or the committee members of this dissertation, Zimmerman argue that the forces designed into the game aim to make the player fail, while the player themselves must overcome these forces. Even in games designed for education, failure is important. In fact, Squire argues that game-based learning environments start with failure. And some of my published work actually backs this up as well, showing that players who failed more in an educational game are actually ones who learn the most overall. Jim G also suggests that good games are pleasantly frustrating in that they keep the player at the outer edge, but within their regime of competence, which I would argue invites failure along with it. G argues that these game principles should be adapted to other learning environments like classrooms because of the strong learning that this level of challenge provides. And game developers have used tools to ensure players are met with an appropriate level of challenge for decades. This can be done as simply as having the players select the level of difficulty at the start of the game. And some games even have the option to turn the difficulty down at any point if you're stuck. However, having this option might actually lower players' persistence as they have an easy and tempting way to opt out of challenging moments in the game, although this might be a research project for another day. Other games have feedback mechanisms to adjust the difficulty to the player's ability. While in last place, when you're playing a game of Mario Kart, you're more likely to get powerful items that help propel you to higher ranks. While if you're in first place, you're more likely to get less powerful items, making the game relatively harder for the more skillful. Some developers have created systems that covertly adjust the difficulty of the game, even within the code of the game. These changes can be as small as adjusting the chance a player will get hit or the amount of damage they take when they do. Coined as dynamic difficulty adjustment systems by Haneke, these systems change how difficult the game is when the player is struggling to ensure that they don't get too frustrated. They can also increase the difficulty to ensure that the player doesn't get too bored if their skill level is higher. While these systems ensure players are kept at an appropriate level of difficulty, when it comes to the goals of the game, sometimes that's not what players are aiming to do. And it's important to note that the perspective we most often take on failure in games is through the hard-coded fail states, i.e. the goals that the developers put into the game that trigger progression. However, the goals that the players might have aren't always as clear as this. So to illustrate this, let's consider how player motivations change what it means to fail in a game. Specifically, Bartle lays out different play styles in MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, that are informed by the goals different players might have. These are based on where they fall on two axes, either acting or interacting, and between players and the world. This creates 4 playstyles: those who act on the world being achievers, those who act on players being killers, those who interact with the world being explorers, and those who interact with players being socializers. Now this model has been built upon by other game scholars such as Yi, but let's just take Barlow's player types to demonstrate how these motivations change what it means to fail in a game. So the killer player type would fail if they did not win against another player, while the explorer player type playing the exact same game would fail if they couldn't figure out how to get to the top of the mountain they wanted to climb. The goals that the players hold can vastly change what it means to fail in that game, despite what the developers intended for the goals to be. Further, some players' only goal is to subvert the hard-coded goals of the game and play in ways that are counter to how the developers intended. Coined as counterplay, these players often aim to play in exact opposite ways as they're supposed to. However, these players, or even these players, set goals for themselves, which in turn inherently come with ways to fail. So while failure is a complex and important part of the play experience, it's been vastly understudied. So from here, we can turn to psychology, the psychology literature, to try to gain some insights on how individuals react to failure. So there are a wide range of cognitive constructs related to failure. Here, we're going to consider a suite of behaviors that I call positive failure strategies. First, a growth mindset is described as an individual ascribing the outcome of an attempt they make on the amount of effort that they put in. And this highlights that if they keep trying, they'll get better and eventually succeed, which in turn leads them to retrying the task after they failed. Conversely, an individual with a fixed mindset ascribes the outcome of an attempt on fixed factors, such as blaming their intelligence. When this individual fails, they're more likely to give up, believing that they simply. Second is achievement motivation. This describes what motivates an individual when they're trying to complete a task. An individual can strive for learning goals in which they are motivated to understand and get better at a task, or they can strive motivated to show their mastery at a task. Take a brief pause here because it was saying that the internet was unstable. Am I breaking up for anyone?
You were earlier, but you're back and good.
Okay.
I missed about half of what you were saying about achievement motivation, but I'm not sure if everyone else did.
Yeah, it kind of like was spotty for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing, like the internet.
Good to know. Okay, so I'll start over from that slide. So second is achievement motivation. This describes what motivates an individual when they're trying to complete a task. An individual can strive for learning goals in which they are motivated to understand and get better at that task, or they can strive for performance goals in which they're motivated to show their mastery at that task. So pursuing learning goals encourages the same kinds of behaviors after failure as a growth mindset, as this individual is striving to improve at what they're doing. This results in repetition and increased effort while they're attempting it. Pursuing performance goals can vastly change the individual's reaction to failure. For these individuals, failure means they were unable to complete the task and show off dream. Hi, Sam. I'm in a meeting.
No.
Sam just came in. Pursuing performance goals can vastly change the individual's failure. For these individuals, failure means that they were unable to complete the task and show off their mastery, which can actually be devastating. And this results in avoidance behavior and feelings of. Finally, the main construct that I use for this dissertation is mastery orientation, as it most closely captures how an individual reacts to failure. Individuals with a mastery orientation typically repeat a task after failing, have heightened affect when approaching a difficult problem, show increased effort in the face of challenge. These individuals are invigorated when they fail. They relish at a challenge, and they take failure as information on how to improve. On the other end of the spectrum are individuals with a helpless orientation. When these individuals are confronted with failure, they're more likely to give up. In response to failure, they report negative affects such as boredom, aversion, or anxiety. And their strategy use deteriorates and their ineffectual responses increase. Helpless-oriented individuals shut down in the face of failure, putting little to no effort in or quitting altogether. And interestingly, these individuals don't actually look any different from mastery-oriented individuals when they succeed. It's only their reactions to failure that differs. And so these cognitive constructs that I've been talking about are often commingled together and used interchangeably. So while I may be using mastery orientation as the most direct measure of how an individual reacts to failure, the behaviors that we expect from a growth mindset and having learning goals are also considered where appropriate. So, and these constructs are measured primarily through surveys, role-playing activities, or discourse analysis. And each of these methods only capture a snapshot of how an individual perceives their ability to persist through failure. And this often means that they get categorized as either being helpless-oriented or mastery-oriented, assuming that they will either always give up or they will always persist, respectively. However, this doesn't account for an understanding of how long an individual will persist through failure. So these literature of failure in games and the psychology of how individuals react to failure highlight multiple important gaps. While failure has been seen as an important part of the play experience, there are many nuances in how players react to failure in games that remain explored. Further, literature in psychology conceptualizes how individuals react to failure, but does not account for behaviors account for the behaviors individuals take in response to it. It also doesn't account for how long an individual will persist through failure. Some of my preliminary work has shown that individuals who regard challenge as an important part of the game experience actually score higher on a master orientation survey, which suggests that people who score higher on this master orientation scale are more inclined to play these challenging games. So to address these gaps, I conducted a study investigating how individuals react to failure in notoriously challenging game Cuphead. Cuphead is a run-and-gun style platform shooter game made by Studio MDHR. For levels, the participant is pitted against the boss enemy immediately when beginning the level and must figure out how to dodge their attacks while dealing enough damage to take them down. The player usually can be hit 3 times before they have to start the level over. Other level types include airplane levels, where the player faces off against the boss while flying an airplane, which allows for vertical hovering. Run and gun levels, where the player must run along platforms, dodging weaker enemies to get to the end of the level, rather than defeating anything. And mausoleum levels, where the player must parry away ghosts as they are trying to get to the urn at the center of the stage. So my participants played Cuphead for 2 weeks in their own time and in their own preferred play space. This was done to ensure their gameplay was as natural as possible. Through this study, I aim to answer the following research question. What is the relationship between mastery orientation and mastery-oriented behaviors in Cuphead? I further broke this down into 5 sub-questions. Individuals who score higher on the mastery orientation survey for mastery-oriented behaviors in Cuphead. Do mastery-oriented individuals perform more mastery-oriented behaviors before performing helpless-oriented behaviors in Cuphead? I.e., do people who score higher on these scales persist for longer? What level features encourage players to persist through a failure in Cuphead the most? Does mastery orientation score increase with more game or failure exposure? And finally, what demographic differences appear in mastery-oriented behaviors in Cuphead or in mastery scores? Before and after playing Cuphead, participants were asked to fill out 2 surveys, a mastery orientation survey for general and context and one for game context. These questions were taken from the mastery section of the family and work orientation questionnaire, which aims at measuring how willing individuals are to persist through challenging activities. So these questions included, I would rather do something at which I feel confident and relaxed than something that is challenging and difficult. When a group I belong to plans an activity, I would rather call the shots myself than just help out and have someone else call the shots. I'd rather learn something that is easy than something that is difficult. If I'm not good at something, I would rather keep struggling to master it than to move on and move on to something that I may be good at. Once I undertake a task, I persist. I prefer to work in solutions that require a high level of skill. I more often attempt tasks that I'm not sure I can do than tasks I believe that I can do. And I like to be busy all the time. So mastery orientation has also been shown to be context dependent. So questions were also modified for a game context as well in the following ways. So I would rather play a game at which I feel confident and relaxed than a game that is challenging and difficult. When a group I belong to plays a game, I would rather myself than just help out and have someone else call the shots. I'd rather learn to play a game that is easy than one that is difficult. If I'm not good at a game, I'd rather keep struggling to master it than to move on to a game I may be good at. Once I begin a game, I persist. I prefer to play games that require a high level of skill. I more often play games that I'm not sure I can do than games that I believe I can do. And I like games that keep me busy all the time. So questions were answered on a 5-point Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, with the midpoint being neither agree nor disagree. These scores were summed in to create a mastery score with questions 1 and 3 reversed. A score of 24 was considered neutral, higher was considered more mastery oriented, and less or lower than 24 was considered more helpless oriented. Participants handed in recordings of gameplay, which were coded for moments of failure, as well as mastery oriented and help behaviors. And these were based on how the literature defines how these individuals would react. Codes were generated from game states denoting the hard-coded fail states in Cuphead, i.e. When they got hit or any time they took damage. Behaviors that were adapting to failure. Adaptations were only coded in response to failure. So for example, if the player got hit by a projectile and then changed their behavior next time they encountered it, it would be coded as an adaptation based on that failure. Behaviors we would expect to see from helpless-oriented individuals, such as quitting or strategy deteriorations. And here, deteriorations were defined as when a player seemingly took an action purposefully to lose. For example, jumping into a pit or jumping in front of a projectile. And finally, I coded for level markers, including when the player start phase of a level and when they completed the level. After playing for 1 week, participants came into the lab for an interview on their experiences with Cuphead so far and about their opinions on failure. Questions included, do you typically enjoy playing challenging games? Is Cuphead as hard as you thought it would be? What do you consider failure in Cuphead? And these were just some of the questions asked during the interviews, which also included follow-up questions depending on how the interview was going. And these were used to gain a sense of the participants' general thoughts on failure in Cuphead and to inform further research. Participants came back in for another interview, a data-driven retrospective interview in which the participants watched clips of their gameplay and were asked about behaviors that were coded with adaptations or deteriorations. This was done to confirm that these coded behaviors were in fact changes in behavior motivated by failure as observed. If it was found the participant had other motivations to change their behavior, the code was removed or corrected and further coding was informed. So in sum, participants conducted mastery surveys for general and game contexts, and then played Cuphead for 1 week. After which they were in Cuphead for 1 more week and were interviewed after to confirm that the changes in their behavior were coded properly. Finally, they completed mastery orientation surveys for general and game contexts again. This resulted in demographic data, pre to post mastery scores, coded gameplay behaviors, and interviews on players' opinions about failure. 60 participants were recruited through departmental listservs as well as during class announcements for a game-based undergraduate course. Of these 60, 23 participants identified as non-binary. The average age was 20, and participants averaged about 20 hours per week playing video games and averaged about 11 years experience playing video games. Hours per week and number of years playing games were combined to create a game experience score. This was taken more as a measure of how familiar they were with games generally rather than how many hours they've accumulated over the years. The total gameplay data consisted of 406 coded gameplay files, averaging 7 to 8 files per person. A total gameplay coded was 256 hours, 23 minutes, and 30 seconds, averaging 4 hours, 34 minutes, and 30 seconds, which resulted in 637 lines of coded gameplay data. Oops. So before I jump into the results, are there any questions about the study?
Small question I might have missed. How long were the interviews on average?
On average, an hour.
Okay.
For each.
Okay, so you had 2 hours basically across the midway and then the post test. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. They range from like 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit more if we, really got into a topic.
Okay. I think I derped out a little bit. What was the second one, the midway through? That one was mostly about?
What?
What was, because there was the post interview, which was about like bad experience, but then what was the one in the middle about?
Oh, the first interview?
Mm-hmm.
That was asking their opinions on failure. Here, I can go back to that slide.
Sorry, I think my internet like conked out during that.
Yeah, no problem. So I asked questions like, do you typically enjoy playing challenging games? is Cuphead as hard as you thought, and what to consider failure in Cuphead. And these are just some of the questions. And I use the answers to these questions to gain some insights on how they felt about failure in Cuphead and to inform further research.
Okay.
The answers to these interview questions don't inform the questions for this dissertation as of right now.
Okay, cool. All right, that's me.
Okay, Reggie?
I have a question about mastery orientation. How did you come to use that as a framework for your research? And are there any alternative theories that would work as frameworks for a similar study?
So there are, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of different cognitive constructs that are around, like that revolve around failure that I could have included, like grit, and dozens of others. There's a lot of different angles to try to approach things around failure in psychology. Mastery orientation is the one that I found that was most directly measuring what an individual or how an individual responds to failure. And I largely picked it because of the failure being a key component to mastery oriented and helpless oriented. Which for the record, I don't love the terminology mastery oriented and helpless oriented. I think there are better ways for us to conceptualize that. And part of the aim of this dissertation is to illuminate, how it is not just someone is mastery oriented and someone is helpless oriented. Any other questions? All right.
Wait.
Go ahead, May.
Oh, this isn't. I was gonna add this at the very end. It's a small note. When you're talking about limitations, you didn't talk about the thing about domain specific versus like a general kind of construct. But then you bring it up later when you're talking about the instrument, because you said there's like the general mastery versus the game specific one. I don't know if that was intentional, but it was just a thing I noticed.
I'm not.
Sorry, what?
I'm not sure what you mean by limitations.
When you were,
referring?
You have a slide that's literally just like a hole in a bookcase where you're talking about the gaps in the literature. And in it you brought up, like 3 points about like they don't account for like how long you persist, and 2 others that I didn't write down. It was just a small thing because you ended up bringing up domain specific and domain approaches. Did that make any sense? I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So do you think? No, that's fine. It's good to know that there was something that tripped you up there. So are you saying that you think that should be mentioned when I'm talking about these gaps in literature?
I think so. Like don't spend too much, like however, just like add a line about it, but it was just interesting because I had thought of that as like he didn't mention this, I'll ask him about this at the end. But then you brought it up later and I was like, oh, okay, well that's great. But then you didn't like foreshadow that. It's fine, but yeah.
Yeah, I included like the 2 different contexts, general and game, because it's recommended that you adjust the context. But I wanted to keep both to see if there were any differences. I don't see it as a limitation to the literature. I see it as like I'm just trying to cover my bases, getting like, in both forms.
Oh, okay, cool. No, I definitely agree with how you did it. So,
okay,
like, yeah, cool. All right, I'll shut up.
No, please, I appreciate the questions. Okay, so let's jump into the results. So for the first sub-question that I posed, and by the way, an aside to all you watching the practice talk here, this is sort of the area where I know I need to make some changes. So pipe in if you have anything immediate. But So the first research sub-question, do individuals who score higher on mastery orientation survey perform more mastery-oriented behaviors? I found that general mastery scores are positively associated with the ratio of mastery to helpless-oriented behaviors. I also found that game mastery scores are positively associated with total number of mastery behaviors in game when considering how long an individual will persist. I also found that pre-mastery scores are also negatively associated with the number of times a level is abandoned before completing it. So this suggests altogether that players who score higher on the mastery orientation survey also show more mastery-oriented behaviors in game and fewer helpless-oriented behaviors, which validates the measure that the study is developing. The second sub-question of this dissertation, do mastery-oriented individuals perform more mastery-oriented behaviors before performing helpless-oriented behaviors in Cuphead, i.e. do they persist for longer? So game mastery orientation scores, as we saw in the slide previously, are positively associated with mastery orientation or mastery behaviors made sequentially. And this suggests that it's not just how many mastery-oriented behaviors an individual portrays, but also how long they will persist before showing signs of giving up. To answer the third sub-question, behavior frequencies between phases and levels were considered. In this slide, I need to clean up and show some visuals here, but so the gist of it, levels with a steep increase in difficulty show the highest number of level restarts, which are a measure of players quitting halfway through to restart the level. The highest number of mastery-oriented behaviors are in the first phase of one of these levels, but then a high number of helpless-oriented behaviors are seen in the second and third phase, showing that this level difficulty increase in this level changes the player's behaviors when they go from the first phases to the later phases. So this suggests that this increase in difficulty at a higher ramp up than the rest of the game can elicit different responses than levels that keep the difficulty increase at a more constant rate. The highest average number of mastery-oriented behaviors before helpless-oriented behaviors, so how long they'll persist, occurs later in the game and in later phases of the levels. And this suggests that individuals who make it further into the game are more likely to persist as they are, suggesting that they might have a higher mastery orientation. The next sub-question, does mastery orientation score increase with more game or failure exposure? So I found that game mastery does not switch over 2 weeks. And I found that general mastery actually drops over the course of 2 weeks. So these are the mastery questions that are posed in a general context. This may be due to the fact that these are undergrads and a lot of them are going through things like midterms at this time or other outside influences to how they feel they can persist through failure. Considering that it doesn't change in a game context, it suggests that it is outside of Cuphead that this change happens. And I know I need to put a visualization up here, but visualizing the pre to post actually shows a leveling out as people who started lower in their master orientation scores tended to go up towards the average, and people who started higher tended to go down towards the average. So we actually see this further in analyses between men and women. So in the sub-question, what demographic differences appear in mastery-oriented behaviors in Cuphead or in mastery scores? We actually saw no initial differences between men and women in their mastery behaviors or mastery scores. However, women significantly increased after playing for 2 weeks, while men significantly decreased in their game mastery orientation scores. And again, further visualization shows that this is a leveling out effect, where some women started under averaged for their mastery orientation score and increased over the course of the 2 weeks, while some men started over average and decreased over the 2 weeks. So this may mean that we're seeing a gender gap that is actually closing after playing for 2 weeks. Women became more confident in their ability to persist through failure, and men came in overconfident and became less confident. So taken together, these sub-questions help answer the main research question of this dissertation: what is the relationship between mastery orientation and mastery-oriented behaviors in Cuphead? So participants who scored higher on mastery orientation survey show more mastery-oriented behavior in-game overall and sequentially, and they're less likely to abandon a level before completing it. After playing Cuphead for 2 weeks, general mastery orientation scores decreased overall, but visualizations show that this is more that this is an evening out of scores, as the lower tend to come up to the average and the higher tend to go down to the average. This is seen especially between men and women, where some men began the study overconfident in their ability to persist through failure, and some women started underconfident in their ability to persist through failure. And they, over the course of playing Cuphead for 2 weeks, sort of evened out. Oops, forgot to move forward here. There we go. And finally, mastery behaviors in levels show players' persistence increasing in later levels and phases, suggesting that the more invested a player is, i.e. the more time and effort they put into the level or game, the more likely they are to keep trying and show mastery-oriented behaviors. I think my clicker died. The implications of these results suggest that this research illuminates new intricacies in how players react to failure in games, which could open up a new way to understand player failure in games, looking at player-centric versions of failure or game-centric versions of failure, and looking at the differences between them and how players react. It also opens up new methodology for understanding how individuals react to failure from a behavioral perspective, as well as highlighting the importance of how long an individual will persist through failure. This also begins to show mechanisms and level features that are more likely to encourage players to persist or to give up. And finally, this could also point towards persistence being a resource that runs out rather than a trait that an individual simply has. So there are some limitations to keep in mind as research moves forward. First, the sample that was taken were undergraduates at UCI. Meaning that they have already gotten into university, which may suggest a certain level of orientation already. I will note that this doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals are more inclined to persist through failure as individuals who are in other demographics or are less privileged might actually be more accustomed to dealing with hardship. We also only had male and female identifying participants. The data may actually, or the behaviors seen may actually be different if we have, or if we had other individuals participate. The age range that we see in this study also doesn't include children or adolescents or much older people, and there may be differences between these age groups. This study also used a game that is known for how difficult it is. Which may have influenced the participants who were recruited to the study. Changing the game that we look at may show very different reactions to failure, or simply the player's expectations coming into the game. It may be very different if we told participants they were going to be playing a very easy game and ended up giving them a very difficult game. These are all different nuances in how their reactions to failure might change. This also illuminates a lot of areas for future research. So in the future, I might look at other games. Are there big differences between a game like Cuphead, which is notoriously difficult, and a game like say Animal Crossing or something, which is a little bit more relaxed, which has its difficult moments, but is, to my point, a very different game. The multiplayer games could be another avenue for exploration, specifically esports. These players have coaches, they have spectators, they have teammates, and these all could be different influencers in how they react to failure. As mentioned, changing player expectations of the game and failure could also change how they react to failure and warrants exploration. And we could also focus on different player goals. So if the player's goal changes, does that change how they react to failure? And does that change what it means for them to fail? Thank you. Thank you. And I just saw chat, so I haven't read any of your chat notes.
That is, I think most of them are yes.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we clocked in like about 45 minutes, which is about good.
Correct.
So besides the chat feedback, is there anything specific?
Sorry.
That's okay.
I feel like you had, okay, this is a very general nitpick. I feel like you had less images towards the end than you did at the beginning.
Definitely true. But towards the end is more based on my results and stuff.
Yeah.
And is less developed. I know I need to like clean up and fix the results and implications and stuff.
Okay. I did like the pacing though.
Okay.
Yeah, it did go pretty well there. And I don't think you belabored anything like too much, but also were sufficient. I don't know if J-Sock and Reggie feel different about that. But yeah, I thought the pacing was good. What other notes was I taking? Yeah. More pretty diagrams.
Okay. So, well, I mean, that's good feedback. So generally, like, content seemed fine. Like, did you follow along for everything? Like, did anything like seem out of place or confusing?
I don't think so. I was able to follow along mostly pretty well. Yeah, can you go back, or can you pull up your slides again for the results and stuff? Just so then I have something to look at, because, yeah.
Can you see them?
No.
Let me
No.
share the screen again. I mean, do you see the slide?
Yes, now I do. Oh, I can't see the slides, but I just see your screen. All right, here we go.
Was there any one in particular that you wanted to look at?
No, I was just trying to. I didn't. I was like just like staring at the screen instead of like taking notes. Freaking should have taken notes. And so that's why I missed like the outline of how things went.
Does this one make sense?
I didn't get the lines, like multiple lines, but
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the different lines are the the average number of mastery until helpless. So how long someone will persist through, or how long someone will persist before they start showing signs of giving up.
Mhm.
And as you can see, like the lines get lighter as they increase in game mastery score, which suggests that those who persist for longer score higher in the mastery orientation survey.
Oh, okay.
As well, all the trend lines are pointing up, which indicates that the number of mastery-oriented behaviors increase as the mastery score goes up as well.
Okay. Oh, so it's each one of these is. Oh, the dots are different colors. Sorry, I was leaning back in my chair and I did not even see that the dots were different colors. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Right. So the dots are different colors. The color indicates how long that individual persisted on average before they showed signs of giving up.
Those are categorized, and those are correlated with the.
The x-axis is the number of mastery-oriented behaviors standardized by HIT, meaning further right means that they showed more mastery behaviors.
I have a question with that. Why are the numbers negative on the x-axis?
Yeah, that's because the numbers are logged because they were skewed right. So the variables were standardized through log formatting, which makes the axis look negative, but they are small log numbers.
I don't know if this is a legit question, but why did you choose to put them all on one slide or all on one graph instead of making like a bunch of little graphs to show each like?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's because this is a multivariate model. So the effect is significant only when you're considering both factors at the same time.
I see. Lol.
Let me make a note on this. So I'll explain the graph more. So explain why, or explain multivariate. Okay, so if I explain that it's multivariate, that the color indicates sequential, how long someone's persisting. The x-axis is the number or total number. Would that be like make this graph more?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, and I can do that for the other graphs too. Is there anything else that like was confusing or that you just think could be better?
There was a moment of transition between player types and
Counter.
like research basis for your argument, and I thought that transition was a little stark.
So the between. Okay, so when I went from.
Like the player type, the model of player types.
Yeah.
I think the next slide.
Yeah,
was
that's what I
research
got.
and psychology.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was a clear transition as to why those two things are connected. But there might not need to be based on the audience in the room, right? So
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
all specialists.
I tried to just cap it by saying, you know, based on all this literature, failure is a pretty complex thing in games. Like it changes from player to player. It changes depending on the game. It's like something the developers think about a lot and researchers have thought about a lot. But we don't know a lot about it. We don't, it's been really underexplored. And then I want to turn to psychology to get some insights to help broaden that. But I can expand that.
As long as the audience understands, then it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know that it was hard to understand, so I can try to make it better. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I still got lots of work to do on it, but it's good to know that it actually made sense and that it flowed fine.
Yep. Like I said, I think your pacing is good. And you're sufficiently concise without like making things sound too complicated.
Okay.
Is it next Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday at 10:30.